Today we're looking at another new and shiny Space Marine model. Let's see what this Primaris Techmarine can do for us in-game. Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics, the strategy-focused 40k channel, where we're all about getting the most out of our miniatures on the tabletop. In today's video we're going to do a bit of a datasheet overview of the Primaris Techmarine, go over his stats, war gear and special rules, any obvious buffs and combos that we can use for him in-game, and how he stacks up against a few of the other options. I think it's pretty nice to see a Primaris version of the Techmarine. It very much felt like an omission in 8th edition when we had apothecaries and ancients and things, and it's pretty nice to see a suitably scaled up omniscient axe and a different take on a servo arm. At least it doesn't look quite as crane-like as Ironfather Phyros is. If you were thinking about pre-ordering him, he's £23.50 or $35 from Games Workshop, or discounted by 20% off to £18.80 from Element Games in the UK, to which I'll leave a link down in the video description. Anything that's bought through there does help to support the channel. In any case, let's jump straight into it and take a look at his datasheet. So the Primaris Techmarine is of course an HQ choice for Codex Space Marines, and he costs a fairly reasonable 80 points or 4 power level, so he's a fairly cheap character as they go. He's only a small amount more than the standard Techmarine, who costs 70 points in the new edition, quite a hefty points rise compared with previously. As stat lines go, he's fairly durable and fairly good at shooting. He's got movement 6, weapon skill 3+, ballistic skill 2+, strength and toughness 4, 5 wounds, 4 attacks, leadership 8 and a 2+ save. Fairly sturdy, but still going to go away quickly to any high strength, high AP shooting. I think he does quite a good job of being a threat both at range and in melee. At range he attacks with a grav pistol and a forge bolter, which is essentially a backpack mounted light heavy bolter, with a 24-inch range, assault 3, strength 5, AP -1 and damage 2. Exactly the same stat line as the standard heavy bolter, shorter range, and he can fire it on the move just that bit easier. In addition, he can fire this on top of firing his grav pistol, or throwing a grenade if he should wish to. I think it's quite nice that they don't make you choose between the two. In any case, having some decent range damage output on what would otherwise be a support character is really quite a nice thing, and the ballistic skill 2+ is very good. In terms of melee weapons, he's actually got quite a few different attacks. His main weapon is his omniscient axe, which will be at strength 6, AP -2 and flat 2 damage. Not too bad for taking apart heavy infantry such as intercessors. He'll be 5 attacks on the charge with shock assault, and he can use one of those attacks to make a servo arm attack as well, which will be strength 8, AP -2 and flat 3 damage, and he'll still be hitting on a 3+ with this, so really quite accurate. Finally, he also gets 2 additional attacks with mechadendrites. These are made at strength 5, AP 0 and 1 damage, so just a little bit to help him out against hordes I guess. The combination of the 3 makes him a fairly well-rounded close combat threat. He'll at least do some damage to either heavy infantry, hordes or vehicles. You could expect around about 1 or 2 dead Primaris Marines on the charge, or about 3 dead guardsmen or orcs. In terms of special rules, he has his standard Blessing of the Omnisci, which allows you to put D3 wounds back on a vehicle at the end of the movement phase, which is a nice to have, but seeing as he's 80 points, I'm not sure it's quite enough to justify his entire inclusion in an army. Fortunately, in the new Codex Space Marines, he's gained the rule Awaken the Machine Spirit, and this one's used in the command phase, allowing you to select one chapter vehicle within 3 inches of him, and until the start of your next command phase, that vehicle gets +1 to hit with its ranged attacks. As it happens in your command phase, you're going to be wanting to set him up within 3 inches of a vehicle, and ideally finishing any move that he does within 3 inches of a vehicle as well. You don't really want him isolated out of position and unable to deliver this buff. Typically, it's going to be pretty useless on anything that already has a 2+ ballistic skill, so not the best for certain Forge World vehicles right now, but to most things that hit on 3s, you'll be getting a 25% damage output buff to the vehicle. You're going to get more out of it the bigger the vehicle that you use it on. Naturally, it's not going to be quite as meaningful if you put it on a land speeder, as opposed to say one of those new gladiator tanks, and theoretically you could use it on any of the Space Marine super heavies as well, including things like the Astreus. Overall, as characters go, the Primaris Techmarine is fairly well rounded, reasonable ranged output, reasonable melee, and delivers some useful buffs to vehicles. So let's talk about how we can try and get a bit more out of him. First of all, you have the option to upgrade to a Master of the Forge, the Chief Techmarine for the chapter, and unfortunately as it stands, Games Workshop haven't come down as to whether it costs 20 points or 30 points yet. It's listed as different costs different places in Codex Space Marines. I'm sure it'll get an FAQ before very long. Being a Master of the Forge allows you to heal a flat 3 wounds per turn for each vehicle, so it certainly makes his repairs a lot more reliable, and for me the upgrade is at least reasonably well balanced. I'd certainly be a lot more inclined to pick it up at 20 points than 30, but even at 20 points I don't think it's an auto-include. I think you could happily justify running your Primaris Techmarine either just as standard or upgrading him as a Master of the Forge. Being a Master of the Forge does allow you access to another couple of options though. He's got a unique Dreadnought buffing Warlord trait to give +1 strength and +1 attacks to Dreadnoughts within 6 inches. +1 strength doesn't tend to be very meaningful on Dreadnoughts, to be honest. They usually tend to hit very hard anyway, but +1 attacks is a fairly decent buff to their combat efficiency. To be honest, I would consider this one if I was set on running him alongside a trio of advancing Dreadnoughts or something. Piling back wounds on Duty Eternal Dreadnoughts as well could be pretty painful for the opponent. The Master of the Forge also has access to Mortis Machina, a relic power axe with strength 7, AP -2 and flat damage 3, and if vehicles fail a save against it, then they get an extra mortal wound. I'd consider it if you are advancing him alongside some Dreadnoughts into the midfield or something, but only if you're thinking about playing him quite aggressively. In terms of chapter synergies, we sort of have to mention the Iron Hands as the most techie of the chapters. You can kind of run this guy as a cut price Iron Father Phyros. You lose the Signal Array, a bit of durability and the Invul save bubble, but you can save 60 points compared with the Iron Father. Typically I'd say that if you're not wanting the Invul save bubble, then the Primaris Techmarine is a bit stronger point for point. Iron Hands have plenty of synergy with vehicles, so it does make sense to run Techmarines in there, and they have a few helpful stratagems and warlord traits that buff your repairs. I think some quirky Space Wolf and Blood Angel builds could be interesting with him as well. Maybe trying to make the most out of that warlord trait to buff Dreadnoughts and run them up with a bunch of Furioso Dreadnoughts, or the Space Wolf Venerable Dreadnoughts, both of which are looking a lot more playable with Duty Eternal. To be honest, most chapters will do absolutely fine with him, provided they have some armour for him to support. Another couple that stand out to me though are Imperial Fists getting a bit more out of that Forge Bolter with extra hits on 6s, and White Scars allowing you to advance, shoot with the Forge Bolter for no penalty, and then charge, meaning that you could have a very rapid little threat sitting in the backfield. As an HQ, he can of course take Warlord traits and relics. Typically, as not the most aggressive character in the world, I'd say is a good choice for any Codex specific buffing options. Say things that make the shooting of your units a bit better around him, maybe the Salamander's Obsidian Aquila to give everyone 6+ feel no pains, the Targeting Protocols one for the Iron Hands rerolls, or anything that can be used to sit back and farm command points. From the core Codex you could think about Storm of Fire, just to give a nearby core unit a little bit of extra AP, maybe could be interesting on Redemptor Dreadnoughts with the Gatling Cannons perhaps. Having those jump up to AP -2 on 6s is quite nice, and you could try and make him even more fighty by taking the Relic Axe and giving him the Imperium Sword Warlord trait for some extra combat prowess. Getting him to strength 8 really is a big deal. Transport wise, I think he's not going to want to be in transports for the most part, mainly because his +1 to hit ability functions in the command phase, and if you're in a transport for the command phase then he's not going to be able to use it. If that's not a big deal though, theoretically he could hide in an Impulsor or Repulsor turn 1. In terms of stratagems, I think some of the most useful are Transhuman Physiology for 1 CP, which could potentially help him stay alive if he does get exposed, and if he dies in close combat then 2 command points for Only in Death Does Duty End could sometimes be worth it if he has the chance to bring down an enemy character or something. In the right circumstances, even snapping off a few shots with that Forge Bolter could actually be really powerful if it gives you the chance to kill something important, say like a last enemy troop on an objective or something. As a Primaris, you could also theoretically use Gene-Wrought Might, though I don't think it's the most efficient on him. So let's talk about using the Techmarine in-game then. First of all, I think you're going to have to decide what sort of units he's going to be buffing, and I feel that Dreadnoughts could be a really good shout, particularly Redemptors, as they can get quite a lot out of hitting on 2s in the shooting phase with all of those Gatling shots, or maybe their big Magroplasma. I think stomping up the board with Dreadnoughts puts this guy in a place that he does quite want to be. He should hopefully be in range with that Forge Bolter to shoot at some infantry, and then maybe be able to jump in and help out with melee when things get heated. Forge World Dreadnoughts, mainly for repairs, could be a useful one. I suspect that they'll be dropping down to Ballistic Skill 3+ with a new index, so perhaps his Awaken the Machine Spirit could be a bit more useful on them then. Otherwise, he just wants to be hanging around your biggest, toughest and hittiest vehicles that you have. Things like Gladiator Tanks and Repulsors are pretty good shouts. They both have tons of guns that will really thank you for hitting on 2s, and also if they're relatively tough then there's a bit more chance of them being injured but not killed, so you can fix them up with your repairs. In an actual game, I think you'd want to deploy him near vehicles and well screened from enemy fire and snipers, and I think in using him the challenge is going to be using his buffing abilities and his Forge Bolter in the early game, and then hopefully later game being a bit of a countercharge threat, or just moving up and forward to bully enemies off objectives. One thing about his datasheet I noticed is that he is quite a good target for advancing, so he should be able to get exactly where you need him. He can still fire the Forge Bolter on Ballistic Skill 3 after advancing, and can still repair vehicles after having done so he shouldn't really have all that much trouble even keeping up with faster units as they make their way across the battlefield. In terms of other options to consider, the most obvious one is of course the standard Techmarine, and compared with the standard 70-point version with just a servo arm, I really think that the extra 10 points is really well spent on him, primarily for that Forge Bolter, but the extra attack and wounds don't do him any harm either. The Techmarine with the full servo harness now costs you 85 points, so a bit more than the Primaris version, and I think that that's a little bit more of a consideration. He does have some decent close range fire support with that Flamer and Plasma Cutter, though I think for a more buffing orientated character, the Forge Bolter and Grav Pistol combo is just a bit more useful. In the HQ slot, he will of course be competing against all the other things that you can take, including chaplains, librarians, captains, lieutenants and special characters. He does have the advantage of being fairly cheap if you want to just fill the slots, but really it's going to come down to your army composition as to what's going to be most worth it. He is a character that needs a little bit of building around to be worth including in your army. If you don't have vehicles, then there's not really much point in taking him, and some types of vehicles will work much better with the Techmarine than others. So not quite as general all-purpose as a captain or lieutenant, but a good alternative in marine armies that are a bit armour heavy. Overall, I think that this guy is decently strong, by no means any sort of auto-include, but still very good in the right sort of build. I think we will see him see some play in some competitive army lists. I'll be interested to see if anyone can make good things happen with Dreadnoughts in the near future. If you've enjoyed the video, then feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics for similar videos to this one. And if you'd like to help support the channel, I'd just like to mention my Element Games affiliate link, which is down in the video description below. If you live in the UK and you're thinking about picking this guy up or any other 40k models in the near future, then Element is a discount retailer that gives 10 to 20% off Warhammer products, and if you buy anything from them after clicking the link, then a small amount of the profit goes to Auspex Tactics without costing you any more whatsoever at the time that you buy. It can just be a way to help support the channel if you were thinking about picking up some models in the near future. For people in the USA and Canada, I do also have an Amazon affiliate link, which works in a very similar way. If you click through it and buy anything whatsoever off Amazon, a small amount of the money goes to Auspex Tactics, and again doesn't cost you any more. They do stock the vast majority of the Warhammer range, as well as basically anything else that you want to buy in the world, so it can be another way to help support the channel. A really big thank you to you guys who have been using this, it is very nice of you. In any case, a really big thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.